Hello and welcome. My name is Shannon Kemp, and I'm the Chief Digital Officer at DATAVERSITY. And we would like to thank you for joining this DATAVERSITY webinar, Fuel Enterprise Agents with Trusted Context, the Roadmap to Enterprise at AI at Scale. It's sponsored today by Informatica from Salesforce. Just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. For questions, we will be collecting them via the Q&A section. And if you'd like to chat with us and with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. And just to note, Zoom defaults the chat to send to just the panelists, but we may absolutely change it to network with everyone. And to find the Q&A or the chat panels, you can find those icons in the bottom middle of your screen or in the top toolbar for those features. And as always, we will send a follow-up email within 2 business days containing links to the slides and the recording of the session, as well as anything else requested throughout the webinar. Now, let me introduce to you our speakers for today, William McKnight, Rob Cornell, and Brian Matsubara. Many of you know William from his monthly DATAVERSITY webinar series, Advanced Analytics, and excited for him to facilitate this webinar today. For those who don't know him, William has advised many of the world's best-known organizations. His strategies form the information management plan for leading companies in numerous industries. He is a prolific author and a popular keynote speaker and trainer. He has performed dozens of benchmarks on leading database, data lake, streaming, and data integration products. William is the #1 global influencer in data warehousing and master data management, and he leads McKnight Consulting Group, which has placed on the Incorporated 5,000 list. Rob currently serves as Senior Director, Technology Business Development at Informatica from Salesforce. He is responsible for building joint go-to-market strategy, co-sell capabilities, and product enhancements with Google and the Informatica portfolio of data-centric solutions. Rob has roughly 10 years of experience building and managing partnerships focused on cloud data management, data quality, data integration, data governance, including managing Informatica's global partnership with Google. And Brian is the director for the Google Salesforce partnership at Google Cloud. He is a seasoned global partner with he is a seasoned global partner executive with over 25 years of multifaceted experience across direct and indirect sales, partner GTM, product co-innovation, and operations. His expertise spans the world's leading cloud platforms, including AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, Salesforce, and Tableau. And with that, I will give the floor to William to get today's webinar started. William, hello and welcome.
Hello. Hopefully you can see and hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. I am glad to be here because I want to know what Google and Salesforce/Informatica is thinking about when it comes to agentic AI, which is going to be a focus for a lot of us information management professionals over the course of the next few years. We're going to give it a real hard go here. And I think it's going to pay off. I think this is a keeper. I think this is something that we're not only trying, all of us trying to get into hard, but I think that there are good reasons for it, but we have to be ready for it. And we have learned, as if we didn't know, that the #1 issue is our data. So that's what we're going to focus on here today, is the data that underlies agentic AI and our future here. Now, studies show, and I'm going to project from the date of the study, but about 20% or so of organizations have agentic AI up and running in production. And I'm thinking about another 50% are working on that, are working on it actively right now. And for the rest of you, we will see. We will see. I believe that you need to be getting about your agentic AI strategy and finding some ways that you can work it in and learn about this and land and expand agentic AI in your organization. So we're going to give you some tips on that too as we go along here. First, agents transition AI from response to proactive action. Okay, so we're not telling AI agents all along the way what to do. The idea is that it sees, it knows, it figures it out. We don't even, now this is the dream, okay? I realize we're not all doing this now. But the dream is that it sees your data and it figures out what the right next thing to do is according to your goals. And it may even help you with those goals as well. This is all supposed to increase efficiency, improve the customer experience because you are bringing more information to bear on that customer experience. You're guiding them more appropriately and enhancing your decision making. Again, we're going beyond human scale in terms of what kind of decisions can be made or what kind of information can go into decisions. And now we're trying to say all data that's in the data architecture. So that data architecture has to be sound. It has to be golden. And we have some ideas for you here today in terms of approaching that ideal. And they're going to be very important in your agentic future. And cost savings, finally, by automating repetitive tasks and optimizing resources, which is another thing that agents do a lot of, they can help businesses reduce operational expenses. Some of you have trained AI agents on optimizing your bills, your cloud bills, your database bills, and so on and so forth. That is a great first step into AI agents. And obviously, data-driven insights. It's all about data. There's none of that unless you put humans in the loop, and we will, but there's not all that human judgment that comes into play when it comes to AI agents. Now, I might be setting up some like big ideal for you that, oh, we're not even close to that, or I'm not even sure the technology can do that. Okay, I admit that. But I think that knowing these pillars of agentic AI is important as you scope the next, maybe it's a small thing that you're going to do with agentic AI. Agentic AI is probably the way that AI is going to get into your organization. So if you've been wondering about that, as I have for quite some time, I think this is the answer. So what are the capabilities and benefits for the enterprise? Automating complex tasks. Like I said before, doing the right next thing, just based upon all the data and all the hooks that it has into all of the software and applications in the shop. So automating all that, providing smart data environments. Now, we have to bring the data environment to the table so that it can do its thing, but it can make that environment smarter and it can utilize that smart environment. AI agents will unlock new levels of data insights and automation and allow you to go deeper, providing or driving proactive decision making. Yeah, obviously. We'll talk a little bit about MCP. It's not a panacea for everything, but it actually is a standard that's emerging that provides enterprise context to decision making and to data, to agents to do all these things with. And I think that's a key part of this as well. Simplifying business processes. Yeah, it's a lot simpler if the machine is just doing it, just doing the right next thing. I'm not so sure that we're not on this precipice of letting this all take off and get away from us. We can't allow that to happen. And I've seen some enterprises approach that level with it already. So we have to keep it under control for now and understand what it is doing. But it will simplify business processes and facilitate autonomous decision-making. Yeah. And hyper-personalization. They can clean up, detect, and provide homogeneous, consistent, and real-time data from complex, disparate sources, such as those found in large operations that you're probably in. Now, building the enterprise information architecture. A lot of people ask, well, how do I build the data for agentic AI? Well, we don't build the data just for agentic AI. We have data. We have it in a shape right now. Maybe it's low maturity, maybe it's high maturity, but it's in a shape right now. I don't know any organization that's going to decide to throw all that out and start again for agentic AI, because you can't leave behind in any modern enterprise all the other things that you're doing with the data. And you cannot create different architectures for each of the different processing types that you have to do with that data. I'm going to read a few here. Batch processing, real-time, stream, analytic, operational, vector, graph, event-driven, transactional, predictive, machine learning, deep learning, NLP, spatial, temporal, complex event processing, OLAP, OLTP, hybrid, HTAP, edge processing, and agentic AI. There's a lot going on inside the enterprise, and the architecture should serve all without massive amounts of redundancy to accommodate each one of these processing types. So what does that mean? As I just mentioned, we're going to have diverse processing approaches that we need to think about in our data architecture, not our data architecture for agentic, but in our data architecture. It must have enterprise usability. This is huge. Redundancy minimization. We can't just recreate everything for agentic and put that over here, and then everything gets out of source and so on. There's a lot of organizational maneuvering that needs to happen to most organizations to bolt on that part that is necessary and upsize some of the areas that are necessary to be upsized inside a data environment so that you can do agentic AI. And that means that redundancy minimization has to be front and center as you go forward, because the tendency I've seen is to just, we'll just recreate all the transactions over here for agentic. That's harsh. That's creating a lot of technical debt. Data reusability is the opposite of redundancy. We create data in one place, we store it once, and we use it for many things. We use it for all of the processing that we talked about before, as much as possible. And tailored structures. Yes, you will have tailored structures. You will have pieces that you're going to have to shape for agentic that nothing else really cares about. Okay, probably. A lot of judgment has to go into your data architecture today, a lot more than ever before. You have to have people that understand all of those processing methods that I just talked about. And I suggest you have a data architecture board or something like that, where new architectures come forward and you make sure that not only it's right for that from experience and expertise from that perspective, but also that it's right for the future of where this organization is going. So I have some clients that we're all in on iceberg. We want everything to be iceberg. Okay, well, if somebody out there is doing something else, then that could compromise that architectural goal. And I'm not holding that up to be, the number one architectural goal here. Reusable extensions, that goes along with tailored structures. Now, I gave a presentation in my series here at DATAVERSITY a couple months ago on maturity, data maturity. And it's based upon research and all this. I won't go into it all, but I want to show you level 5. These are some of the key points of level 5. And number 1 up there at the top is that they have a strategy centered on autonomous agentic AI. Yes, at least a strategy at this point. That's what's level 5 out of 5, maturity with data at this point in time. They also have the other things here, which are important to all of us as data professionals, right? Data treated as a monetizable financial asset. The operations are becoming prescriptive and self-executing, personalization at the individual level, and executives manage minimal oversight here, but they do manage outcomes while AI executes. Are there organizations doing this? Yes, there are a few, not too many, but this is high maturity. Keep in mind, when it comes to data maturity, the bar is always going up. It's going up fast right now. So if you're down low in data maturity, you're a 2 out of 5, let's say, that's not going to cut it for agentic. You've got to bring it up to a certain level. And keep in mind that if you're at a level where it's working for agentic, it's not going to be good enough for a year from now to sit on that. So there's a lot of work that we need to do as data professionals. AI agents want all data accessible, all enterprise data, audio, video, text, and alphanumeric. They want high velocity, fast-paced streaming data, not batch loaded data necessarily anymore, not exclusively that, I'll put it that way, okay? So when you're thinking about architecting your pieces of the future, think about high velocity, fast-paced, and unstructured data is not a secondhand citizen anymore. Okay, it always has been. Yeah, we do a few things with it over there. It's that high volume data that we barely touch, and it's only for a few specialists. Not so anymore. It's as important as structured data. So we need to bring that to parity. Whatever we are doing with structured data, we're governing it. We're making it perform. We're designing it well. All that we need to do for our unstructured data as well. And that's going to take our volume under management up by leaps and bounds. Some of you, it's double, triple, okay, or even more. But that is what is necessary today. So get your data act together. That's the lifeblood of AI agents. And a little bit on this slide here about infrastructure inversion I want to share with you. The narrative shift is from AI as a bubble to AI as actually underbuilt, at least within enterprises. It's driven by the move from training foundational models to the production deployment of AI agents. So other things that are important here, this move from human speed to machine speed data, where humans consume data in small batches. That's all we can comprehend, right? But reading a report or checking a dashboard, yeah, that's basic compared to AI agents, which consume data programmatically and continuously. Now, for a human, a column named customer ID is easy to understand. For an agent, that isn't enough. Companies must invest in semantic models. This means labeling data with its business meaning, relationships, and rules of engagement. So you have a great data lake, or you think you have a great data lake, but if you haven't invested in semantic metadata, you may or may not be able to bring that data to AI agents. You might be banging your head against the wall trying to make that data work when really the effort should go into semantic metadata, which sets it up now and for the future. I always believe you have to have an application in mind in terms of everything you're doing, but you also have to have that future in mind, the future goals of your data architecture in mind. Now, practically speaking, what I'm going to speak for myself. What have I come to in terms of recommendations around what that agentic AI architecture should look like, or what that data architecture should look like that supports agentic AI? And these are my three pillars, really. Data mesh, which is a combination of centralized and decentralized. The data is connected, but it's not all like in one big data lake. Okay, there's many. And what are those data lakes? They're actually data lake houses. So data mesh with data lake houses, moving data products across the whole spectrum of the architecture. So there are a few key technological advancements that have enabled the data lakehouse. We know about this, right? Metadata layers for data lakes to set up those drill-through paths from the warehouse to the lake, okay, and all that. Okay, we should use this. We should use this idea. This is what is settling in as an approach that not only myself, but many enterprises come to me with. This is what we've decided we want to do for the agentic future. And these data products, we could talk a lot about that, but these are curated, well-defined data sets or services that are packaged up and delivered in a user-friendly, accessible, and consistent manner, usually through an internal API. Now, another part of this architecture for the future is open table formats and open file formats. So table formats, that's the method of organizing and structuring a data set's files within the file system. And file format is the physical format in which the data is stored in files. To me, we named them backwards, but I'll go with it, right? Table formats and file formats. You don't have 100% control over this unless you do, unless you really study this and determine that you definitely want Iceberg, and I'll put that argument aside, but if you definitely want that, you need to use a database that allows you to have that as a format. It's simple as that. So open table formats like Iceberg and open file formats like Parquet provide the essential interoperability layer that prevents vendor lock-in and slashes the integration tax for agentic AI. Open table formats and open file formats are an important part of this architecture. And finally, I try to never talk about agentic AI architecture without mentioning that agentic AI requires organizational transformation as well as the architecture components. Stepping into this area, you are stepping in with peril if you do not consider the need for human oversight and your ethics as an organization. Where are they? And are we doing anything compromising to that? Organizational change management. bringing the people along with the agents, with the AI. And there will be a reduction in traditional roles. Now, as of now, I haven't noted that there's a reduction in roles, period, because there's a lot of work to be done, and there will be for the foreseeable future, as far as I can tell, in this area. But some of you need to upsize your skills so that you fit into this world that's coming. There will be a reduction in traditional roles. Maybe the data integration architect, maybe the master data management architect are less interesting now, and others, because AI is stepping into some of those areas. There is a disconnect between executive expectations and really expectations, period, throughout the organization and the technical feasibility. And I mentioned before that data architecture, I'm trying not to use the word committee, okay? But that data architecture group that oversights the data architecture, yeah, you might want to have one for AI as well. Call it a center of excellence, that's probably better. So there are challenges to agentic AI, without belaboring them too much here. Inconsistent use of the term and understanding, a lack of standardization. You probably have several dozen definitions of AI agents bouncing around your organization right now, but try to minimize that. Try to put some culture into the organization. That will only grease the skids and make your AI agent projects more successful if everybody can be on the same page. There are technical challenges, data quality and availability. We talked here about architecture, okay? And we're going to talk about architecture, but what about the data itself that goes into the architecture? It must be of quality. It must be available. It must be explainable, and must be, and keep in mind that these models can be computationally intensive, requiring significant resources to deploy and maintain. So you have to have a pipeline of those resources if you're going to do a lot of this, a lot of inference, for example. And there are process challenges, aligning AI with the business goals, knowing what you're doing. Are you building a program that's going to support many applications over the course of time? Or are you building a project to get something done and provide ROI to the business? Most people don't know this. You're doing one or the other, but if you're just doing a project, can we not make that into somewhat of a program so that we have some reusability from what we're doing? We have some connecting points to the rest of the organization and to our future. So also, it's very important to set yourself up so that you can navigate from POC to production. You haven't done it before with agents. You've done it before with basic databases, dashboards, reports. Hopefully that's all running smooth for you. And you can build on that. So you can build on those DevOps with your ML ops. And what about LLM ops? Which LLM do we use for what, and how do we prompt it, and all that sort of thing? Organizations are definitely getting into that because there's so many choices today. I've mentioned MCP. It's a critical standard that safely and securely manages how agents connect to disparate enterprise data sources. Maybe we'll get into it in the Q&A a little bit more there. And finally, human in the loop governance. So while agents operate autonomously, strict governance accountability and a human in the middle approach remain mandatory for really everything today, I would say. So build this out with humans in the loop. And I'm going to turn it back to Shannon to introduce our Q&A. If you have questions, be putting them into the question part. And now I'm going to bring on Shannon, I guess, next, and then the panel.
No, actually, yeah. So it's time for, we're going to have a nice little panel discussion that William's going to moderate here. I know, William, you have some questions queued up. Feel free to put some questions in the Q&A panel for William to grab. That feature is in the bottom of your screen in the toolbar there, or in the top toolbar if you're got your screen in full view mode. So take it away, William. Yeah, let's get the discussion started and bring in Rob and Brian and have some fun, some more fun.
Okay. Now, Rob and Brian, welcome. We're seeing a massive shift from chatbots to autonomous agents. I just talked about that a little bit. From your experiences, what are the best practices for identifying agentic-ready use cases that can move beyond POC? So I'll start with you, Brian.
Yeah, no, well, thank you, William, and thank you for having Rob and I. It's a pleasure to be here and to share the mic with you, so to speak. No, it's a very good question. Yes, I mean chatbots have been around. It's so funny. Uh, the rate of innovation is so fast these days that these chatbots were around for a hot second before they start to get made somewhat obsolete by these agentic use cases. Um, Generally what we try and tell people, because for a lot of people, agentic AI is still fairly new, and quite honestly, it is still evolving and will continue to evolve daily. Usually when we advise customers, we say task them to look at things that are very time consuming for employees, right? So things that are very operational, just a lot of manual steps that are required. A lot of those manual steps now can be automated via using via agents, similar to like how business process management used to work. Now you're just doing that business process management really with agents. Um, Other use cases would be ones that are prone to human error, right? So if there's something that you're entering is very sensitive and you need to make sure that you're using the exact right keystrokes, typos could be, catastrophic to the outcome. Things that need to be very precise. Agents are good for that, where humans, as precise as we'd like to think we're super precise, we're not quite as precise as an AI agent would be. And it's also important that you have a clear, is your use case, and then therefore your agents and your workflow is clearly defined, right? So you want to know specifically what you want it to do and the specific steps that are required to ensure that you're actually making the most out of the agentic workflow. And the last thing I say is keep in mind it's a journey, not a destination, right? So you're going to try, you're going to iterate, you're going to try again, you're going to iterate again. And then hopefully, as you become more proficient with it, you'll start to get a very, very productive and efficient workflow.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's really important that the culture accommodates trial and error
Yeah.
in this process and stays the course, doesn't just jump off at the first sign of an issue. It can work, and so keep at it. Rob, anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think well, one, thank you for having me here, and want to thank Brian for being with us as well. I think Brian covered really the business side of identifying the right use cases really well. I would say I would add, you want to make sure that you understand or can measure what the outcome is for the agents. Like what is your expectation? What are you requiring the agent to do, and do you know how to measure that, whether it was successful or not? But I think you said something in your intro, William, that I think is really relevant here at the beginning of identifying the use case, and that was get your data act together, right? So I think when we look at the agentic ready use cases, I think we're as Informatica by Salesforce, we're looking at it really at, do you assess the confidence you have in your data first? Like the data that the agent is going to use and reason over, is that grounded? Is that grounded in all of the context of your business? Do you have a golden record so that you're confident that the agent is working off the best? If you're looking at a customer, is the agent working off the best definition of a customer across your enterprise? And I'd say another way to look at that trust in the data is score the use case, score the data across a couple of pillars. Like, can you move the data? Do you know where the data is? Can you move it? Can you discover the data? Can you clean it? Can you protect the data that the agent is using? And can you unify all that data for the agent again to access? And I'd say, the other thing here would be governance. Like, do you have data governance in place over the data the agent's going to use? Because that should really be a no-go, a go, no-go decision. If you can't govern the data, you probably shouldn't be using it for an agent use case, especially if it's involving like PII, PHI, financial data. You want to make sure that data is really locked down and governed. So I think looking at it a little bit from just the pure data aspect, how do you know if you have the data that will make for a successful agent use case, right? Because you don't want those hallucinations. You don't want trial and error is great, but you also want to start with that solid data foundation.
That's great. I agree 100%. And I'm glad you brought up data governance. I mean, just think we're actually asking these agents to go and do all this stuff autonomously just by looking at data and assuming that it's correct. And if you want long workflows with agents, which is, the ultimate goal, you can't be jumping in to check it and check for data quality along the way. You have to make sure that it's great going into the agent ecosystem here. So my next question is about RAG. Okay. RAG architecture. Standard RAG was a linear pipeline. That's what I built anyway. But agents are iterative and make their own decisions, so to speak. How do the requirements for data pipelines and enterprise context change when you have an autonomous agent acting on that data? And Rob, I'll start with you.
I think you hit on a couple of these items in your slides. I think if we're looking at traditional data use cases, batch data is usually just fine. If you're looking at agents, they want much more real time, near real time for most use cases, so that the agent is answering with the most up to date information. I think the other thing, again, you hit on this a little bit in your session. Again, traditionally, we've always focused on the schema of the data, like how's the data set up, what's the schema. Now we're really focused more on semantics, like does the agent have a true understanding of the semantics behind the use case? Again, and those aren't just generic, those are tied to your specific business. Every company is going to have a different definition of customer, supplier, region, et cetera. And you really want to make sure that the agent understands that. And that's again, a shift change, if you will. And I'm going to go back to MDM. Like, do you have the gold record? Is the agent really focused on that golden record? And do you have survivorship rules set up for when that data changes? And I guess the last but not least would be, we kind of covered this with real time, but data latency. Like, do you have, again, depending on the use case, the agent's going to want that real time data, and you need to have it, the pipelines that support that and are engineered for low latency as well.
Absolutely, you do. Brian, you want to add on to that?
No, I was going to say, very well said, Rob. Yeah, and I think the old adage is right, and it still applies, right? Data, the garbage in is garbage out. So you need to understand exactly what your master data source is, and are you pulling from the right data source? I mean, the agents will actually grab data and they'll use specific models, LLMs or whatnot, to generate a result, but it's going to do that based off of the source of data you're providing it. Where traditional data pipelines were historically more rigid, and because they're more rigid, they were having a human in the loop when something went wrong was super important. These agents now are actually more adaptive, so they can actually kind of course correct as they're going along. They can learn, and then they can actually, in some cases, clean and transform their own data, and then make sure they're put in whatever data warehouse or data store you want. So you do still need to keep an eye on where the data is going, but very important that when you're extracting data out or using RAG, that you know exactly what data source you're pulling from. And in some cases, you may, if you're not pulling from the right data source, you might try another one just to see what the results could be, and see if there's conflicting results. But yeah, knowing where your data is and keeping a receipt or a data lineage is very important.
Yeah, and in RAG, you're combining your data sources with usually an LLM or a small language model, and you have a lot of choices there. And through trial and error, hopefully you figure that out, and you have good data going into those RAG architectures. Now, speaking of good data, data quality of data in general, across all the lakes, across the mesh, that's one of the biggest barriers to building out your agentic workflows. And that is also an area that agentic AI is targeting, that is to improve the data quality. But how well can an agent improve data quality? And do you have to have a human in the loop of data quality now? Because we want to bring that quality to a standard so it works with all our agents. So let's use agents to help do that. But how far can we go? Brian, you want to start us out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one of these things that one of the questions that a lot of people have right now, as far as uh, what does a human do versus what does a computer do? And look, we believe that having a human in the loop is still very critical. Like, think of AI as just a real powerful tool, right? It's a very powerful tool that'll help you do things at a much faster rate than simple, manual keystrokes. But you still need to have a human in there to interpret the output, look at complex edge cases, and try and make sure that you're looking for hallucinations, because this is not, I mean, AI is very powerful and getting more powerful every day, but still not magic, right? It is still operating based off of parameters that humans set, and humans need to make sure that they're continuously evaluating the workflow that they created, which tools they're using, again, the quality of the data that's going into it. So humans are still very much very necessary, but again, consider AI as a powerful tool, not a magic wand.
Yeah, well, we'll see a year from now if we don't think
I know, is this being recorded?
that it's magic. It's going to start feeling that way, I'm afraid. Rob, you want to add to that?
Well, I think the way things are going, it might not be a year; it could be 6 months that we have to revisit some of this. But
very true, very true.
But I say, when from an Informatica perspective, we've launched some of our own agents. So we have the Claire AI engine to help specifically with some of the heavy lifting around data quality. So, from an AI perspective in the product, we're adding things like auto classification and profiling the data while it's being moved, and detecting anomalies in the data before it reaches the agent. We also help generate lineage automatically, but I'm going to double down on the human in the loop scenario here, right? I think you don't want, like, an agent should never be able to self-correct data that it's also using for reasoning. Like, you don't want the agent to define its own data, right? Because then you end up in some situations that I think we've all seen in headlines where an agent decides to do something on its own. You want to have that human in the loop. So I think it's incredibly important in scenarios like MDM. You want to make sure that you've got a human in the loop when you're merging records, especially in regulated industries. There's some things that you need a human to go double check that. And I think certain quality, like data quality failures, again, you want to set up some rules for when are you okay with the agent making a decision, and in what scenarios do you want to make sure that there's a human double checking before the agent makes a change. And again, along the way, you want the lineage and governance so that no matter what, you can go back and look at when a change was made, how it was made, and what did the data look like before that change was made, so that if you do need to revert, you've got the trail, right? You can go back and say, okay, this is where the decision was made. And if it's an agent that made that, you can also course correct, right? You can say, okay, this is how it got to that decision. I need to upstream make some changes so that in the future we're aligning on the right correction here, or the changes to the data.
And I would certainly like to have that AI Center of Excellence support.
Absolutely, right.
When it gets to these types of decisions that affect the enterprise in this way.
Well, I think you bring up a good point there. I mean, you talked about whether it's a data architecture board or an AI Center of Excellence. I think that's you talked about the business side as well as the data side, and I think the business has to really have a clear set of guidelines for things like the data quality and where can an agent make a decision, where does a human have to be in the loop. You really, as an organization, need to settle on clear rules of the road for how this is going to roll out, and what are the checks and balances that you have in place.
Absolutely. Great. All right. So we have some live questions. Somebody's picking up on when I talked about data products. Data product, I'll just read the question. Data product or data contract is the standard for data exchanges? Question mark. So let me just set that up a little bit. Data products being that package of data that is interchanged through APIs within the organization across the mesh on a contract basis. So that's where the contract comes into play. I didn't mention it in my talk, but that's the contract between, the data contract is a contract between the provider and the user of the data. So this is what I want, when I want it, how I want it, the quality I want, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're the data product owner, then you would be responsible for providing that product to that API. So that's the definitions, but is that the standard? That is the question before us. Brian, have you seen that people adopting this? Could we call it a standard?
Personally, I have not, and I'll admit I'm not a super expert on that particular area. Standards right now are still being formed. I think conceptually, though, I think of data as a product as a finite, finite object, so to speak, of something of value. And to your point, William, the contract is, again, the purchasing agreement of said product, right? So they are complementary in nature. I don't think that they're not vying for the same definition in the standard. They are different components to a future standard.
Yep. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that we're seeing across multiple customer sets is the data product sort of shows up internally as, I'd say, like internal data marketplace. So it's a area or site where I can go and identify other data sets across the enterprise that I may want to check out, like a library. And I want to use those for my use case or train my agent. And I think they come with a data contract. Like you get a description of, here's what's in my data set, here's how often it's updated, here's where the data has been sourced, here's the lineage. So I think they do go hand in hand. I don't know that I'd say there's a standard yet, but that's sort of the motion that we're seeing is the data product or products show up in an enterprise-wide marketplace, and they have a description tied to them that I guess would in this case serve as the contract.
Nice. I like where you went with that. Hopefully you have reusability with your data products.
I think that's the whole point, right? If you're going to go to the trouble of coordinating or coalescing around a data set or data product or set of data, you want to make sure that it's usable and discoverable, so that it's not just a one and done, or people aren't having to replicate that same search for data over and over again. You can include multiple data sets.
I just think of all the judgment that we're leaving everybody out there, all the work that we're leaving everybody to make this right. All right, I'm going to stick with our live questions here. We've got another one. How to differentiate between agent applications and RPA applications? That's a good one. It seems like sometimes the agent term is being overly used. And I'm glad I got you guys for this. Rob, you want to?
Yeah, I guess so. I spent some time in the RPA space, and I think I would go back to my view would, one, yes, the agent name is overused. I think we can all just agree on that. But I think from an RPA perspective, you're looking at more if-then type decision making rather than an agent which is actually doing some reasoning based on the data it has access to. So I think there is a difference. I think you could, I guess, term RPA as sort of agent light or agent like. But I think, to me, that would be the main difference, is you're going from a more of an if-then scenario or a decision tree with branches to an agent which is going to look at the information it has access to and reason and make a decision that you may not expect, right? It might not have been in that decision tree.
We expect AI in our agents. Yeah. And when it's not there, that's like AI washing. And so we want to watch out for that. Brian, Anything on
Yeah,
that
no, I was going
RPA
to
issue?
echo similar sentiment, and the way I've had it explained to me before is if you think RPA, so robotic process automation, right? So RPA is really good at doing very precise, repeated tasks, right? It's code that does something very what it's told to do, but that's all it does, and it's very powerful, right? And you can really automate a bunch of manual type of data entry flows and things like that, or business processes with RPA. But again, it's a very specific tool that's doing something. Where an agent is really more, think of it, instead of being a tool, think of it as being more of a project manager or a knowledge worker, right? It actually can reason, right? The whole reason behind, well, it is AI, to your point, William, is that it does actually make decisions. It can reason. It can adapt. So it is way more extensible than simply an RPA. I don't even know what you would call it, but an RPA widget that's doing what it was programmed to do, right? So it's thinking, it's evolving, it's reasoning. So it's a way more advanced concept than RPA.
I remember initially when AI agents came out, we were sort of equating them to people, and the agent was going to replace a person in the job that they did. I think we've gotten away from that because it can do so much more across the board, but still, that's not a bad way to think about it, I guess. Now, earlier, we talked about picking your first targets for AI agents. Now, let's say that they've picked a good target, and that their data is at a level of maturity that we talked about so far. Okay, so they're ready to go. But what recommendations at that point can you share for those customers that are just starting out on their agentic journey? Brian, do you want to start us with that?
Yeah, no. And look, a lot of people are starting now. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
people are not behind if this is your first go at it. One piece of advice we give is to go wide and not just deep, right? So many times people will find a particular use case and just kind of want to keep drilling into that particular use case to see if they can get better results or more efficiency out of it. But it's also important to think across the spectrum of different use cases you may have inside of your business, because you may find ways that you can apply agentic AI in ways that you hadn't thought. So be open-minded. Think about different types of use cases that you might be able to improve efficiencies, and really automate other tasks. I think another area that's fastly evolving is multi-agent environments, right? So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, William, MCP, right? So Model Context Protocol. So you have MCP, and then there's A2A, and those are they're complementary to each other, right? Where MCP really focuses on connecting agents to data sources and other tools, where A2A facilitates agent to agent communication, right? So if you think about agent to agent communication, you can actually start getting multiple agents engaging in a single workflow to actually go fetch data from a variety of different sources, do different types of manipulation with that data, and pull them all together. So it's not, you don't simply have to have a single agent and a single LLM, for example. You can have multiple agents coming in, start talking to each other, and those types of standards are being set. So MCP again being a protocol, and then A2A being the basically the standard in which agents talk to each other, and they can come from different platforms as well.
Lot to think about there. Rob, for our majority probably of listeners who are starting out, any advice to add?
I guess if it's your very first agentic use case that you're going after, I think you've got your data in place. You know that it can be trusted. I think you may want to start looking at internally facing workloads first before you do something that's going to be customer facing. So maybe you start with employee FAQ, or some sort of internal use case first, to just again prove out that you can do it, and not have necessarily an adverse effect on customer relationships. So I think internal phase would be a good way to start. And then as you go along, I think to Brian's point, you want to look at what are some broader use cases, and what's the value add they're bringing, right? And I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. You need to clearly understand what you're looking for from the agent, like what does success look like, and also look for those use cases where it's not necessarily again, for your first one, it's not necessarily a overly complicated task or complex decision-making process, but it's something that clearly will drive value to the organization. And that can be either in savings of time, resources, or actually, revenue. So how do you focus on those as your key use cases? And another reason for doing that is back to like the data architecture or the AI center of excellence. You don't want to be in the scenario where you're doing a POC or you're launching your first agentic use case and it fails because you haven't thought of those things. Because then you've just set back the whole organization, because now people are going to go, well, we tried that and it didn't work so well, so why do we want to do it again?
Yeah. Something doable, but meaningful.
Yeah.
Also to the business. Now, I definitely don't want to get through this hour without bringing out some of the thoughts from the perspective of you two who sit in these very powerful companies in this space of agentic AI, Google and Salesforce / Informatica. So are you guys working together? And hopefully you have the same answer for both of you to this question. But here's the question. What are Informatica and Google Cloud doing together to help customers be successful on the journey? Are you co-innovating, Brian?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a fundamental aspect of the way that we do these technology partnerships, right? It is a combination of different type of working attributes that we do. Like, so Rob knows this very well, right? There is the co-building or co-innovation part, which I really think starts is the foundation of these partnerships, right? Because we have to have something that we've built together, a solution that really combines our respective technologies that solves an interesting business problem, right? So the co-innovation part is there, and that's key. And then we do co-marketing of that solution, right? So how do we tell the world what we do and why it makes their lives so much better? And then, of course, there's a co-selling part of it too, where we equip both of our go-to-market organizations to actually, talk to customers about the solutions we build. So absolutely, co-innovation is fundamental to what we do. And I think there's different levels of it, right? So, for example, we have a number of very powerful Informatica SKUs that are made available via the GCP marketplace. So customers can just go to the Google Cloud marketplace, get access to the Informatica products that they want. That obviously are running on and take advantage of a number of data services that Google Cloud provides. And another example would be we do tight integration and tight collaboration around the use of BigQuery, right? The one thing about infrastructure as a service or cloud services, right? I mean, they're very powerful. They're accessible from anywhere, but nobody uses a data warehouse simply for a data warehouse. They have to have the right tools to get to it. They have to have we have to have the right integrations with the leading vendors in the market, so customers can take advantage of the services we provide, like a BigQuery. And BigQuery is fundamental and it's strategic to everything that we're doing when it comes to this AI space. Because again, data is the fuel for all of this. And Informatica helps customers leverage their data that's stored in BigQuery to actually run these powerful AI models. So it is fundamental to us. We do a ton with them. And Rob, you've been working with Google for quite a while now. And now that you're part of the Salesforce family, I think even more so. So
yeah, we're verging on 10 years of partnership. I think Brian covered sort of the three legs of the stool: the co-innovation, the co-marketing, the co-selling. But when you really look at it, it's how do we bring the technologies together to either answer a specific use case for a customer or set of customers, or to make using the products together easier. We strive to be a launch partner with Google whenever possible. I think one of the most recent examples of this is when Google BigQuery began to support iceberg tables. We're right there with them, right? We launched that at the same time as Google rolls that out. Within the Informatica product, obviously, we support BigQuery, we support Google Cloud Storage, all the other Google data warehouses as well as offering what we call recipes for Gemini and Vertex within the Informatica product. So kind of think of them as quick starts for how to get working with Vertex and Gemini and Informatica. We've launched joint architecture diagrams that show customers kind of what does a reference architecture look like for agentic AI when you're using Google and Informatica. And I would be remiss not to say, Google Next is coming up in April. I would PR would not be happy with me if I talked about the things that we'll announce there, but stay tuned, watch this space. Late April at Next, we'll be announcing some more collaborations that we've done.
And one last thought there in this, Lillian, like the launch partner aspiration that Rob had talked about is kind of the goal that we have of all of our technology partners when we launch a new Google service. But I think a lot of people just don't realize that there is months, if not quarters worth of work that goes into that to become a launch partner. It's tight collaboration between our product teams. It's our engineers talking with each other. It's sharing ideas on how to create better interfaces and all those kinds. There's a ton of collaboration that goes on behind the scenes to have that one event where we launch it. They launch a supporting product at the same time that we have a product as well. So there's tons of work that goes on behind the scenes that we're very proud of once we actually get it to market. So that's the nature of the partnership.
I look forward to that. This is a powerful combination, and I can't imagine everything that you're probably cooking up together. So this is this partnership's well worth considering as everybody out there starts tooling up their agentic AI infrastructure. Now, I'm going to probably end on this question here that came in about governance. So Rob, get ready. You brought it up. What would be the scope of governance that you mean in this context? How would you each define governance and the top 3 priorities for that function within large organizations? So can you clarify, Rob?
Yeah, so if you look at like the dictionary definition of governance, it's the policies, it's the standards, it's the process that you put in place to make sure the data is accurate. If you go below that, when you're talking about an agent, it's access control. So, limit the access that the agent has to only the records that are relevant to its role. So make sure that it doesn't have access to all of your data, but just the access that it needs for the role that it's playing. Data quality rules need to be in place. So again, you don't want, without those, the agent could potentially write firm fields that it shouldn't, that are unvalidated, right? So you want to make sure that you've got that data quality in place. And then the other governance, I touched on this a little bit, but the auditing. So track every action the agent is taking with the data, so that you can go back and review that, who triggered it, what data it touched, when it touched it. So those would be kind of that's how I would describe it.
That's good. And those data quality rules come from governance that we're applying to the data, to be sure. Brian, anything to add to that?
No, I think Rob said it. Rob said it really well. Rob said it best, as closest to it. And the only thing I'd add to that is, data, I think we all understand now is exceptionally valuable and only becoming more so, right? So like any type of valuable asset that you have, that's powering your business, it's your responsibility to make sure it's protected, it's standardized, you control who has access to it, and then of course you can track the lineage of it, so you can verify the results of whatever you're using that data for. So it's imperative that people are very conscientious about their data governance and data management, and without that you could either lose your data or have it corrupted or worse. So yes, it's fundamental to anything you're going to do in the AI space.
And that's a great summary of this hour, because that's what I wanted people to know, is that data is important to agentic AI, and get your data act together. It's architecture, and it's also data quality. And we talked about all the things that go into that. So with that, I will turn it back to Shannon to say goodbye. Shannon.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for this great presentation and discussion. And thanks to all of our attendees who are so engaged in everything we do. Just appreciate it. Just a reminder, I will send a follow-up email by end of day Monday for this webinar with links to the slides, links to the recording as well. So thank you all. I hope you all have a great day and enjoy.